Good evening, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here. No, not the pregame show, the pre-lock show. The pre-lock show. I'm used to the pregame show. This is kind of the pregame show. It's the pre-lock pregame to Thursday night football. It's the New York Giants versus the Washington football team at 8:20. Brought to you by BetMGM. If you want to bet on the game, want to bet on some props, go to BetMGM. Use the promo code GRINDERSBET. All one word, GRINDERSBET. And for a $10 bet, you get $200. They just gave you $200 just out of nowhere. You want some free money? Go over there to BetMGM. It's a 40 and a half total. Pardon my language, but before we got on the air, Justin, STL Cards, who's with me, called this basically this game is shitter. Right?
That's correct. That's what it is.
But I like them. I like the shitters.
It's right up your alleyway. Then we should have a great slate for you tonight. You get these kind of games sometimes on Thursdays. We got spoiled with a pretty good one last week, so certainly can't have that 2 weeks in a row. So here we are tonight with the NFC East game, and hey, somebody's going to break the slate. Just a matter of figuring out who that's going to be.
It could be a slate breaker with only 12 points, though. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that many points.
Could be a slate breaking defense. Could be a kicker, 50-yard field goal.
Well, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Hit those thumbs up. Give me those tummy thumbs. They help us out here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live on this channel. We got plenty of NFL content tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday morning. So thank you for being here. Post your questions in the YouTube chat if you get anything. Discuss amongst yourselves. Talk to Devin in the chat. I'll scroll through and we'll answer a bunch. We got 50 minutes. We got plenty of time. But the first thing that we typically check out here is inactives. Is there any surprise at all? Barkley's active. Is Colin Johnson is inactive? Is there anything that does anything change anything that we would have looked at like 5 hours ago?
Not really for inactives. I think the biggest question is how much Barkley will play. That's the big question mark, and we're probably not going to know that until we, see him on the field. He played 29 snaps last week in a tough matchup and gets another tough draw here against Washington. So, he's kind of the biggest wild card, I think, in terms of playing time expectations.
Right. If I go to scores and odds, which is a sister site of ours, to look at some of the props for tonight, maybe you get a sense of, where the betting market is going. I'm going to rushing yards, and Saquon Barkley at BetMGM is 43.5. But his touchdown prop is, let's see here, minus 115. So like at 10,000, would you agree with me that I'm not sure you're at 10,000. I'm not sure you're playing Barkley for a 100-yard game or anything. I think it's more likely it's a low scoring game, and maybe in the red zone, he runs one in, and on a low scoring slate, even though, getting like 14 points for 10,000 doesn't sound all that appealing. Like he may still be one of the top 6 scorers on the slate.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to whether or not he can outscore Gibson, because Gibson's going to be so popular, unless they're both on the optimal, which could happen. But I mean, they're basically the same price. Gibson's going to be higher owned. So I do think Barkley makes sense on some lineups where you're intentionally not playing Gibson. Just because I don't think both of them together at their salaries are probably going to be on the optimal, but you never know, especially if it's a lower scoring game. So if this was a different opponent and like a total of 50 or something, I probably wouldn't have much interest in Barkley here. But because you mentioned the nature of the game and the fact that the total is only 40 points and the game could be close, there might only be a couple touchdowns. I do think that at least keeps him in play, particularly for GPPs.
Right. If this is a low scoring game, if this goes under 40 and a half, if this is a 17-7 game, right, that's 3 touchdowns. Most likely the winning showdown lineup is going to be with the 3 touchdowns. Like it's quite possibly no one gets the 100-yard bonus, either receiving or rushing. No quarterback gets the 300-yard bonus. Like we may not see anyone score more than 20 points. And on those types of slates, 2 things are apparent. One, correlation won't matter as much. You could see a wide receiver captain. You know, you have a Galladay that goes 7 for 60 with a touchdown, be the highest scoring player with 19 points. And Daniel Jones, you know, because the Giants only scored 1 touchdown, like with 200 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, like he's not in the winning lineup. Yet Galladay outscores, you know, the Washington team scores 2 touchdowns, and it's not to the same person. It's you know, Adam Humphrey scores a touchdown, and Antonio Gibson doesn't. Right? Cam Sims scores a touchdown. Right? What ends up happening is that, you know, you have the winning lineup have a wide receiver captain without pairing with his quarterback, and you also may see a lineup that the optimal lineup may leave 12,000 on the table. Right? Like something like that. So I think if you're building lineups for DraftKings, you're gonna in order to avoid duplicates and also being that it's a low scoring game, if you could get the touchdowns, which could come from anyone, right? It could be I was going to say Ricky Seals-Jones in a double tight end set, like for 200. It's like, okay, well, 1 for 5 with a touchdown. Well, he could still be out. He could still beat out the defenses in that regard. So I think the number one thing if you're playing the large field DK GPP is do not be afraid to leave a ton of salary on the table. Like most of my lineups leave at least 5,000 on the table, and I'm hoping for the low scoring game. Okay, now if it's a higher score, if it goes over, then obviously we're going to see a lot more wide receivers. You know, more salary will be spent, and we'll get more ceiling results. But would you agree, Justin, that if you were to captain anyone, like the chalk captain, probably, I mean, the highest rejected player on the slate is not even the highest, you know, price player on the slate is Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be the most popular pick, I would think. You know, with McLaurin fairly close, I think those are the 2 people that feel the safest. There's definitely some anti-Giants bias out there. You know, they looked terrible last week, and Daniel Jones is bad and all these things. So I think Washington will carry the higher ownership as a whole, with kind of Gibson and McLaurin, and of course the quarterbacks probably taking up the lion's share of the captains.
Another thing, because it's a low scoring slate, is that the defenses tend to go over owned. We currently have the Washington football team defense at 21% owned, which is not you know, ridiculously high. But I always look at the prices. So whenever you look at if you're going to play the defenses or the kickers, I talked about this last year all the time. It's not about the median score of the defenses. So we have Washington, Giants, we have Hopkins and Gano. Okay, so you have a $5,600 defense, a $4,200 defense, a $3,800 kicker, and a $3,600 kicker. Now, typically, these are the players that don't have high ceilings, right? Like if unless the Redskins. I always go get it's hard. Just
Choose
a name. Choose a name already. Call it the Commanders or whatever they plan on doing. It's not about how many points they score. It's can a player below them outscore them? And I think on this slate, we have Kyle Rudolph, Devontae Booker, especially with Barkley possibly being limited. McKissick. We have, obviously, we'll talk about Diami Brown. Even Sims and Tony. I think there are enough players underneath the defenses and kickers that if one of them scores, just one, well, I don't know which one it's going to be, scores a touchdown, scores 10 points, it's quite possible that knocks out the possibility of a defense or a kicker being in the winning lineup. Now, when the defenses are cheap, if the defenses were 2,800, obviously that now there's less people underneath them that could outscore them. But I think, especially with the popularity of Diami Brown, Justin, Diami Brown is, if he's going to play 90+% of the snaps like he did last week, obviously 1,400 is quite underpriced for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased from him dominating college DFS for the last few years, but he's really cheap and the obvious salary saver on the slate. He played 93% of their offensive snaps last week, so it's pretty clear that he's going to be the second guy in terms of snap counts. He's going to be ahead of Humphreys. He's going to be ahead of Sims, and Sims only played 2 snaps last week. So I think Brown is certainly fine at that salary. Now, maybe it's less relevant because, people are leaving money on the table. You don't need your 1,400 or whatever salaries, not an issue, but.
Or no, you play Diami Brown and you still leave money on the table.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly do that as well. I mean, because Brown could be 4K or 5K and still be playable. So.
Right. I think I did a Twitter poll a couple of hours ago about, I asked what position player in the captain is most likely going to lead to more duplicated lineups if you have to spend at least 49,000. And I put Gibson, I put Heineke, I put McLaurin, or I put I think I put McLaurin and Diami Brown. Now we have Diami Brown in the captain slot owned at let's look here. 2.62% owned, which sounds like, oh my God. I mean, if I play Diami Brown in the captain, like no one, quote unquote, is gonna do that. And then if you put Diami Brown in the captain, like I'll do that right here. Like I'll press the optimize button. Look, oh my God, look, well, I could play Gibson, Heineke, Jones, McLaurin, Galladay, and still leave 500 on the table. Like why? No one's gonna do that. Even if Diami Brown is 2% owned in the captain, this contest on DraftKings is 200,000 entries. 2% of is still, we're talking about 4,000 entries, right? And if people are all going to go, well, I can spend the money, right? So I'm just going to play. How many combinations could you possibly have? You're paying up everywhere. Like there's no other slots that you could be playing. You play Barkley instead of Jones, and even then you're leaving 900 on the table. Or you're playing McLaurin instead of Heineke, and you're moving to Thomas. Well, you can't even get the 49K. So I think a lot of people are going to go, I'll try to be sneaky, play Diami Brown in the captain, and then pay up everywhere else. And maybe that ends up being the, quote, winning GPP lineup, but it'll be duplicated like 400 times.
Yeah, a lot of those lineups are going to look the same because it's pretty easy to build. I mean, you can basically play anyone you want. So, what about a Brown captain lineup with a whole boatload of money left on the table?
That I could. You're describing 20% of my lineups.
I mean, how much is a whole boat? Like, what's the most you have left on the table in any one lineup?
I think 8,000.
8,000. Okay.
Yeah, which essentially is it's a McLaurin lineup, and you're putting Diami Brown in the captain instead. Like you're doing something like that.
Sure.
Right.
I don't hate it.
Right, because I think on this slate, Diami Brown should be like 5,600. Right. If he was 5,600, we'd look and go, okay, he's a reasonable play, right? We'd say, okay, you can play him if you want, and then play him at the captain. But I think at 1,400, people will be jamming him, and 2% of people will be jamming him in, thinking they're getting unique in the captain when they're really not. So all my Diami captain lineups are leaving a ton of money on the table. So if you're going to do that, that would be smart for duplication, and don't dupe me, bro. Right? Don't. I'm telling you what I'm doing. Hopefully, if you do it, it's me and you at the top, and I don't mind splitting it with one other person if you do it that way. But what other captains would you be looking at? Obviously, Antonio Gibson is going to be the most popular captain. Would you consider doing, like, if we believe that the Washington team is going to win, if they're going to win on the ground, and the Giants are going to have to, play catch up, and Barkley is going to be fairly limited, would it make more sense? It sounds counterintuitive, of playing one of the Giants receivers in the captain with Daniel Jones in the flex, but then the other 4 spots are Washington players, and that's still a lineup as if Washington wins. It's just that, Golladay puts up, 101 in a loss.
Yeah, I like Golladay as a captain. He's probably one of my top guys in terms of, he's got a ceiling. We know he can have those high target, high volume games. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough matchup, but everybody on the Giants has a tough matchup. You got to play somebody from them. So I think Golladay is the play. I mean, 85% snap share last week. Slayton was at 70. Shepard was the highest, but Golladay is going to be out there basically every route. And I think he's my favorite Giants captain for sure.
How about the cheapos? I mean, we talked about De'Ami Brown. A lot of people are going to use him as the cheapie.
The cheapie captain? I mean,
I'm not talking about the cheapie captain, just the cheapie flex even. Because Evan Ingram is out, and Caden Smith and Rudolph will pretty much be splitting snaps. But Smith is more of a blocking back, while Rudolph is more of a receiving tight end. But they're both see the field, and we have Caden Smith at $200. And, especially in a 2 tight end set in the red zone, there's no reason why Caden Smith can't catch a touchdown. There's no reason why he can't catch 3 or 4 passes during run formations, play action or something. I'm not sure if he even, yes, I have some Caden Smith, but I think I'm actually more interested in Kyle Rudolph in a lineup where I'm not playing like multiple Giants receivers, where especially with the Washington pass rush, and the Giants O-line is not known for keeping Daniel Jones, giving him so much time. You'd have to think that the floor on like the interior receivers, the dump offs, and the tight ends and Sterling Shepard in the slot, you have a much higher floor for those guys than you have like Golladay and Slayton.
Yeah, you're not getting the same floor. Although, Golladay with his volume hopefully has a floor every week, but I don't mind the tight ends as value plays. I think the backup running backs are reasonable as well. I mean, if you truly do think Barkley's going to be limited, like, Devontae Booker or McKissick on the Washington side, if you're in some Gibson faded lineups, Jarrett Patterson, if you're really, really looking deep, another guy who was really fantastic in college, fantastic in the preseason in a couple of games, but he only played 4 snaps last week. So it's not like you're banking on anything there, but he's $400. But I think McKissick at 2,200 on DK and Booker at 2,800 are certainly viable if you want to go there.
You also have Kadarius Toney there. I mean, he's the 4th wide receiver. I see him only really getting many snaps if the Giants are down by, more than 2 touchdowns or something. But he's viable. Or we could play the anti-narrative here. The like everyone is taking one game, like a sample size as a big deal, right? 93% of snaps for De'Ami Brown. And it was expected that it was either going to be Brown or Sims in that role. Well, what happens if this week they game plan and it's Sims instead, right? Like maybe they split more. Maybe instead of 93 to barely anything, Sims is seeing the field 50% of the time. And because the ownership here difference is 30% to 2%, I think that that if you wanted to take that leverage shot against Diami Brown and you still wanted to make a punt, I think the direct leverage is either Sims or you play Humphreys at 4,800 because people aren't going to pay up as much. We have him at 10% owned. But I think directly, if you just want to say throw out the first game and go, well, maybe Cam Sims does see more work this game. We'll be watching the game, their first drive, and we'll see Cam Sims out there, and then you'll go on Twitter, and everyone will be tilting that what happened to Diami Brown.
Totally possible. We've only got the 1 week of snap count data to go off of. So, and it's not like Diami Brown was great last week, right? He could sit out the game tonight and have more receiving yards than he had last week. So it is a potential overreaction to 1 week. And, we saw Sims get some extended looks last year. It's not like he hasn't been out there before, but I don't hate it at $1,000.
I wouldn't play him in the captain though.
No, I wouldn't.
By him, I wouldn't do.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would either. I'd play one of the crazy running backs before I played him at captain.
Okay, let me go through the YouTube chat for some questions before we start taking a look at Slate IQ for a second. Let's see, going through. Eric Lynn says everyone on the expert survey, which is part of our premium package here at RotoGrinders. Feel free to sign up for RotoGrinders Combo Premium or NFL Only Premium by clicking on the link in the description, getting $10 off your first month. But everyone on the expert survey said limit 2 pass catchers for each team. Do you guys agree with that as well? Would you limit just because it's a low scoring,
right,
total? Would you limit to you're not going to play Galladay, Shepard, Slate? You're not going to play Thomas, McLaurin, Brown. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, there's probably not going to be a 400-yard passing game here, particularly with the weather. It's a little sloppy and rainy, and actually like the under on some of the passing yard props. So, definitely don't want to get carried away. It's not Patrick Mahomes out there slinging it tonight. It's Taylor Heineke and Daniel Jones. So keep expectations low. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but the only caveat I would say is that I'd be more inclined to have more than 2 if I'm playing one of the quarterbacks in the captain spot. Right, because if let's say they do have a 300-yard game and 3 touchdowns, then it's more likely that you get ceiling outcomes from 3 receivers. It's less likely to have I severely limited. I don't know if I have any where I have a wide receiver captain and then 2 other pass catchers and the quarterback in the flex, because if they all get there, it's most likely the quarterback that's going to be the winning captain, right, not the wide receiver.
And they're not all getting there. So,
right. Well, I don't even know, Justin. I don't know what getting there is for this game.
8
right,
points.
Getting there could be 14 points. I mean, that's what I mean. I don't think we're going to have a 30 point. Multiple people with. I mean, we had the other day where Lamar Jackson had 20 points and he wasn't even in the winning line.
Boy, that was a weird game. That was a wild game. I don't think we're getting that kind of game tonight either.
I think we answered this question about thoughts about using Caden Smith in the flex. I think that's perfectly fine. Right? I'm still more inclined, no matter, even if I'm playing a $200 player, I'm still leaving money on the table. I think yes, you could play Caden Smith and use most of your salary, just that I still think that lineup is duplicated. Right? I even think that lineup is, I mean, you don't have to get unique, right? We're playing for what, $1 million? Or is that up front again? $1 million? If I dupe with 4 other people and I make what, $300,000, I'm happy. That I'm fine with that. But I don't want to be part of a 432 lineup dupe train. So you don't feel the need to just because I have Caden Smith. I mean, what's his ownership here? We have him at 0.7% owned. So I mean, he's getting really down there. But I would still, I mean, even leave 1,000 on the table there. It's like I said before, this could be the slate that Caden Smith has a touchdown. As long as you get the 2 other touchdowns, you're fine. And if those touchdowns come from cheap players, we could legitimately see a lineup that leaves 15,000 on the table win today, if it's low scoring enough. I'm not building those lineups, but I mean, you can. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible for sure, depending on how the game works out. So if it's 13-7, you don't see too many of those in today's NFL, but this would be one of them where it's possible.
Low scoring game. Why not the kickers? I mean, truthfully, I think I prefer the kickers to the defenses. Just based on ownership.
I don't have any problem with the kickers. I mean, unless depending on the field conditions, but it doesn't seem like it's super windy, just a little wet. So I have no problem with that.
Right. I'm just looking at the difference. I think the Washington defense is going to be overowned in general, and the Giants will get up there a little also. So I think I'm more. I'm describing my lineups. I'm playing 80 lineups or 83 lineups technically. I think I have the Washington defense in like 3 of them, but I have Dustin Hopkins in like 40% of my lineups. So playing him instead because I think more people will play the defenses. How about kickers? Oh, the kicker and the captain. I will never make that one. I think it's won twice since Showdown has been introduced.
Hey, that's not bad.
I guess on this type of slate, maybe it's a little bit more.
You need the 5 field goal game.
True. I think on the both winning kicker captain Showdown lineups, it was Ryan Suckup for both of them. That's really weird. It's only happened, I think, twice in the past, 3.5, 4 years since they've had Showdown.
Yeah, I remember that one. I don't remember the specifics, so.
Okay, let's look at Slate IQ, which is part of our premium package. Okay, get a little sneak peek. And what Eric Beimfor does is that he goes into our results DB database. We have all the DraftKings data till the end of time. Goes through and finds the archetypes, the games that fit this around the same total, around the same spread, similar type teams, similar salaries, similar kind of everything. The 25 slates that are closest to that. And then uses that data to do 1,000 simulations, 5,000, 10,000 simulations to see what shows up most in the top 0.1% of lineups for a large field DraftKings GPP. And here, the roster construction, we see here, ownership versus how often they show up. The winning team, 5-1, winning team 4-2, are the huge leverage points. Some 3-3, but it tends to be overowned. But these 2-4 and 1-5 lineups, meaning 2 from the winner, 4 from the loser, 1 from the winner, 5 from the loser, are virtually like non-existent. So this leans more towards onslaughts of whatever team wins. It doesn't necessarily mean the favorite team, right? If the Giants win, it could be a 5-1 Giants lineup. So looking at this, I look at this and also looking at the captain usage. And here, positive leverage, which means it shows up more often than will it be owned. RB1 is the highest by far. And that's obviously at like Antonio Gibson or Saquon Barkley. Then we have wide receiver 1, which is Galladay and McLaurin. Then we have tight end 1, which is Logan Thomas, Kyle Rudolph. Then we have quarterbacks. And then we also have wide receiver 3, which kind of makes sense on this slate because who's the wide receiver 3 for the Washington? Diami Brown, right? That's also Darius Slayton. Wide receiver 2, not so much, but it's there. DST, not so much. Running back 2 and kicker, not so much. So this is all based on simulations. It shows you the range of outcomes based on our projected ownership. And we release this for every Showdown Island game slate. So that's Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. So sign up for RotoGrinders Premium, and you can get access to that. It typically comes out a couple of hours before the Showdown slate. Click on the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. You have to admit, Justin, that if people are building Giants onslaught lineups, they're going to be different.
Yeah, they are. And I don't mind the Giants in this game. I mean, a lower scoring game, turnover could make a difference. I mean, it's just that people are a little bit more uncomfortable clicking those buttons with the Giants because you got a star running back that might be limited. You've got a quarterback that, has just a history of not being very good and people like to pick on. So, I think this is going to be a competitive game. So I'll be a little more overweight on the Giants, I think, than most.
Going through the YouTube chat. Feel free to post whatever you want. We got 20 minutes left in the YouTube chat. Blender, how do you wind up on 83 lineups? Well, it's because I built 80 large field lineups, and I have 3 single entry 3 max lineups that I built, and I throw those in also. So like those are typically probably going to be duplicated, but it's one of those peace of mind, right? They're $15 each for $45. You know, they end up being duplicated 80 times, and it still gives me $16,000 or whatever. I'd rather just, okay, I'm going to throw it in. So that's where the extra 3 lineups come from. Mr. Donk says, but if we play for a big Washington win, wouldn't it make sense to fade Gano, as the Giants will need touchdowns and not just points? I think that's a very good point. I make a group typically that the team that's behind, I'm going to play the kicker. Right. It's very, very clear. If I'm playing like wide receiver captains, typically I don't have the opposing kicker in the team, because if they're blowing them out, McLaurin has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then Washington's up 21-0. Like it's unlikely that the Giants are going to be settling for field goals, you know, in the second half. So yes, I do agree. But obviously, and
I don't think either team's getting ahead by 3 touchdowns.
Right. Well, you never know. But in those cases, yes. And the same reason why you typically wouldn't play the kicker and the opposing defense together. Right. If the defense returns a touchdown, like it typically means that the opposing team isn't scoring, and they'll need touchdowns and not field goals. Because maybe in the first half they're kicking field goals. You're down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I mean, yeah, obviously we have NFL coaches that don't mind taking a game from 14 to 11 for no apparent reason. But most likely they're not going to be kicking field goals. Let's see. Matthew P says, we're talking about Slayton or Shepard in the captain. Like, these Giants receivers are fairly close to one another. I mean, I think Shepard has a higher floor, Golladay has a higher ceiling, and Slayton has the lower ownership. Like, Slayton is only on the field like 60% of the time, but I mean, he's as much of a deep threat as Golladay is, right? It's just that Golladay may just get more volume. So we wouldn't be shocked if Slayton pulled down a 65-yard touchdown reception, right?
No, I think he's interesting for. Let's see, what do we got for his ownership? We got him at about 20. So, and the price point's a little bit awkward for him. There's not a lot of other people in that range, so he will fall into some lineups just out of dumb luck. But you know, his let's see. I was looking at some of his props. His receiving prop is 35.5. I mean, it's 10 or 15 yards below some of the other guys, but
right. If we look at receiving
60 yards and a touchdown is fine tonight.
Right. Yeah. At BetMGM, we have Shepard with 55, Golladay 51, and Slayton 34.5. And then if we look at the touchdown props, we got, let's see, where it's not organized. Golladay plus 180, Shepard plus 190, Slayton plus 280. So that's mitigated by the price. So that, you know, none of the Giants receivers have that, you know, that high of a shot at scoring a touchdown. But I mean, in comparison to someone like Barkley, or probably even Daniel Jones, he could run one in. Maybe it's one of these games. Do people not realize maybe that Tyler Heineke is not like a stationary quarterback? Like, we have a rushing yard prop here on, like, Daniel Jones, you think of as he could run the ball, right? He has a 20 and a half at BetMGM, right? Which seems to be the lowest, right? If you're gonna bet the over on Daniel Jones rushing yards, in comparison to all these other books, like DK Sportsbook, PointsBet, these other ones, like MGM is the lowest by 4 yards, 5 yards. So if you're gonna bet on that over, I'd be a line shop and go to BetMGM. Use the promo code GRINDERSBET. Bet $10, you get $200 like instantly. Boom, done. But Heineke's rushing yard prop is 22.5. It's actually higher than Jones's. Do people not realize that he can actually run the ball? I mean, I don't think Washington wants him to run the ball, but I think because he's a backup quarterback, they think that, it's a bunch of dump offs and he's not going to do anything. But I mean, he could rush in a touchdown.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he's got some mobility, so I don't mind the quarterbacks on that front. You just never know. I mean, if they run one in, so if you're you're playing a quarterback, I still think you got to pair him with somebody. He's going to have some passing yards, and you probably need at least that leading receiver, but you don't necessarily need two.
Chief Justice is in the chat. He says, I'm absolutely building Giants 4-2 stacks. And he says this, and I will get them this time. Okay, so there. So now you know what Will is doing. I have some 4-2 Giants lineups, but I've mostly Washington. I'm mostly playing Washington and kind of mixing in all the Giants. But I do have I think out of the 83 lineups, I have like 2 or 3 Giants onslaughts. But I have mostly Washington.
Yeah, I like the Giants side a little bit.
Chili 13. What about kicker with the opposing quarterback as captain? Kind of like Jones and a Giants win. So I was thinking of going with Hopkins too. This is FanDuel though. I mean, I don't play the Showdown product on FanDuel because the lack of a multiplier and only 4 slots. But do you have any takes on what would be good to do on FanDuel? Because truthfully, in this type of game, I think the amount of MVP, I think Gibson and the quarterbacks and McLaurin maybe are going to be like MVPs. But I mean, if this is a low scoring game, I think there's a lot more options that you can actually use at MVP and not feel like you're giving away money.
Yeah, you don't get the defenses on FanDuel. So, I mean, I think, again, Galladay could be in the mix. It's just so hard on FanDuel without that multiplier to make a case for somebody like McKissick or, one of the tight ends in MVP spots. So
well, Logan Thomas, he could put up 100 yards, right? Logan Thomas is kind of like their wide receiver too, right?
Yeah. I mean, him and Galladay. All right, that's fine. I'm probably not getting too much cuter than that.
Shepard, Slayton. It could happen. Barkley, he could fall in the end zone twice, right?
Well, I just mean, I just explaining as low as I would go is probably those.
Right. I wouldn't go to the McKissicks and the Devontae Bookers in the MVP slot, right? Adam Humphries even. Like you don't have to go that far down. But a lot of times in these showdowns, like the MVP is like where you got like 4 guys to choose from because it's unlikely that anyone else kind of outscores them enough that it's worth it to do. But I think on these low scoring slates, like feel free. I wouldn't put a kicker there, but you never know. Things have gotten weird. Let's see. Going through, people are just calling stuff in the YouTube chat. Rudolph is catching a touchdown. Okay. We got a psychic in the chat. Colin Richardson says you don't need a Washington receiver. Gibson saw practically the same amount of looks in the air. How would a lineup like that? You play Gibson and like Gibson in the Washington defense or something like Gibson and Hopkins and then 4 Giants.
I mean, you could play Gibson and Heineke and hope Heineke rushes one in and maybe throws one to Gibson, and no receivers.
And then you play the Giants coming back.
Yeah, I think that's intriguing.
If you were to play a Washington onslaught, so a 5-1, like how would you play that? Because if you put Gibson in the captain, obviously, if he scores touchdowns, it's taking away from other people. But also, if you put McLaurin in the captain, you're also, these are touchdowns that like Logan Thomas, like all the yard. If you have to predict who's the highest scorer, who's more likely to appear in the captain slot if you're playing a Washington onslaught 5-1.
I mean, it's probably Gibson, but because they'll probably just get really conservative in the second half. I don't feel great about it. I mean, maybe that's where Jarrett Patterson gets some reps.
Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'll just build the top 20 lineups with that onslaught, the 5-1. I already have groups set in, like correlated groups, so that'll all figure it out itself. It may not have to be a correlated lineup, but I got them in. So if we're going to build Washington onslaughts, the highest projected one would actually be Diami Brown, the captain. 48.7. This is based on our gridiron IQ projections. Brown and the captain, Thomas, McLaurin, Heineke, Gibson, and then Daniel Jones as the one Giant. I mean, that could kind of make sense. I mean, if the production for the Washington team is very even, why can't this lineup win? I mean, yeah, Diami Brown. Oh, is he going to put up 20 points? No, but let's say Gibson gives you 12, like without the multiplier. Gibson gives you 12, Heineke gives you 12, McLaurin gives you 12, Thomas gives you 12, and Brown gives you 12. Like then this lineup, when Daniel Jones gives you 12, and then no other Giants have more than 12. Like
everybody
this lineup
gets 12.
Everyone gets 12. Like this lineup wins. Because the only way to fit in all these 12s is to have Diami Brown on the captain. This could make sense. Like here's one, 46-1. Brown, Humphreys, McLaurin, Jones, Heineke, Gibson. McLaurin, captain, Humphreys, Brown, Heineke, Gibson, Jones. That's 49-9. I think this lineup will be more duplicated. Diami Brown, it's giving a lot of for the top 20 lineups.
It's because he's 1,400.
Right. It allows you to get all these raw points. I think I may have some. Oh, here's a Patterson lineup. The 14th lineup, the 19th lineup. McLaurin and the captain, Patterson, Brown, Jones, Heineke, Gibson. I mean, all of them are Gibson. I mean, I would assume 90% are Gibson. There's actually 2 non-Gibson lineups. What do those look like? Let me see. Let me find a non-Gibson lineup. Onslaught. Okay, here's one. No, that's Gibson and the captain. Oh, the reason it says that, okay, because Gibson's and the captain's and the other one. Okay. No, so it's Gibson for all of them. So do you think that's the biggest leverage point on the slate? Like if you were to build, you just said, I want the easiest path to first place. Would it be to just fade Gibson, McLaurin, and Diami Brown, and then just X those guys out and just make all the other lineups?
Well, then who's putting up points for Washington?
Cam Sims,
Jarrett
Logan
Patterson.
Thomas, J.D. McKissick. You never know.
I don't think I would X all of them out. I'm fine if you want to take a bold stance on one of them.
Right. If you do a group, any one, like max one, like that could be worthwhile.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Right. We're making a lot of stretches here.
Got to make stretches.
Right. We're trying to win $1 million. That's at least I'm trying to win $1 million. Eric Lynn says, is Daniel Jones your preferred one giant in Washington onslaughts? He says he's not sure he loves that.
Well, it's just the path of least resistance, because if they're getting smacked around, then they're probably not going to throw Barkley out there for extra snaps. I mean, if you want to pick the right, if you try to pick the right receiver, that's fine. But I mean, if they have to sling it in comeback mode, then Jones is at least going to get you something, unless he gets hurt.
But I mean, quarterbacks always have the highest floors no matter what. Right. But wide receivers will have higher ceilings. So if you're not going to play Daniel Jones as the one guy coming back, I mean, you would play Golladay, get one of the top 3 receivers. Because you can basically saying that either Daniel Jones just gets there via volume and spreads it around, and he's sitting there with 14 points, right? He throws 200 yards and 1 touchdown, right? Something like that. But if a lot of production goes to one person, if Sterling Shepard has a PPR day, even if it's not good, 6 for 60 and a touchdown, like that's still more points, right? That's 18 points. So like from a floor perspective, I think Daniel Jones is the best play for a floor. I think the wide receivers are better plays for a ceiling, unless obviously Daniel Jones runs the ball, right? And then you get the best. Then you get the best of both worlds. Then Sterling Shepard would still have the 6 for 60 for the touchdown, but Daniel Jones would now have 20 points because he ran in the other touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, in the projected lineups are always going to like the quarterback just because of that higher floor that you mentioned.
Dean is in the chat now.
That's scary.
All with this is a hot take. This is a
Dean has a hot take.
It's a really bad. It's more like a bad take. It's
Dean
a terrible take. It's it's total terrible take.
Oh, okay.
He says, I'm no fortune teller, but I've consulted Gray's Sports Almanac. Okay. Both McKissick and Booker are scoring touchdowns tonight.
That would make this game real exciting.
Let's just say if they both score touchdowns, I probably am going to lose. I mean, I'll have one of them, but I probably will not have 2 of them in a lineup.
Yeah, that's probably a little frisky, but I mean, nothing is completely crazy if the game plays out as expected and is, a defensive slugfest.
Chief Justice wants to know what time the slate locks. You I don't know if you were here on listen on Monday, but I screw up sometimes also. So sometimes it's 8:15. Like on Sundays, it's like 8:15, but then during the week it's 8:20, and
it is 8:20. You got 5 minutes.
Right. Well, Chief Justice thought it was 8:20 on Monday, and then didn't get his lineups in.
Learn the hard way.
Right. Well, I didn't put in a dummy lineup. That's what I told him. He had reserved lineups. Like, just put something. Have a train of whatever it is.
I've never in my life built a dummy lineup.
You've never built a dummy lineup?
I've never built a dummy lineup. It always has, like, if I'm going to take 10 seconds to click through names, like, just pick names that are at least going to play.
Right. Well, that's what I mean by a dummy line.
Okay. Well, but so a lot of people will get stuck with dummy lineups and they'll have like IR guys in there. Like, why?
Well, I'm not saying to do that, but hey, Justin, it's still better than having no players in, right? I mean, you can at least have 4 of the out of the 6 be active, right?
Yeah, you just got to make sure when you're building your dummy lineup, you got to at least take active players, so that way if it remains your actual lineup by some force of nature or your mind forgetting, at least you might dumb into a win, if you will. Right. If you're putting the IR guys in there, like, that's not going to win anyway. So at least take the extra 5 seconds to put, when you're reserving your entries and putting in a dummy lineup, at least put players in there that are going to play. And if you're out there and you're the type of person that builds a dummy lineup and puts the IR guys in there because you didn't take 2 seconds to just put regular guys in there, well, I don't know. Shame on you.
You don't have any sympathy for those guys.
No sympathy.
Right. I typically just go through, like, when the slate opens up and, a couple of days before, I'm like, okay, I would try to build, like, whatever the cash lineup is. Or, like, what's the most, okay, Gibson a captain, both quarterbacks, and Diami Brown. And then, okay, like, it's a lineup that's going to be duplicated a million times, probably going to be in double ups. And I'm not thinking that hard. It's not like, oh, should I click Holiday? It's just, I'm just putting something in,
right,
just in case. And then also, here's a tip that I learned. In sports like NBA or MLB, or even NFL, you could even say. It's not as much in NFL. Make your dummy lineup with later games. Right? So like in MLB or NBA is a perfect example where, we'll have a 7:00 game, a 7:30 game, 3 7:00 games, a 7:30 game. And it's like, well, if you miss lock for whatever reason, you have a CSV upload error or whatever, it's like, at least like in MLB, I could get correlate. I could build just, I guess most of my lineups are going to be Giant stacks or Mariners stacks or some West Coast game, rather than have like, oh, I have 4 one-offs in my lineup because they're all like 7-10 games because it's a Phillies guy and a Nationals guy. So a lot of times for NBA and MLB, even, hey, this week for Sunday, most of the good games on Sunday are the 4:00 games. So if you're going to build a dummy lineup, and you'll still be able to build a ton of combinations and have all the slots open for you if you build your dummy lineup with the later games. Is that a good tip?
Yeah, that's another good tip.
Right.
And you get the late game hammer. I mean, that's never a problem.
Right. The only time you can't really do that is golf, right? There's no
there's no real
how is that this morning with John Rahm? I was looking through my Twitter feed. What kind of press work does PGA do where
it's awful,
where we don't even know if the favored player of the entire tournament is even going to play?
Awful. And his odds to win were plus 350. Now there's 156 golfers in a tournament. You don't see plus 350 odds. I mean, we haven't seen that since Tiger Woods. And so, the Ryder Cup is next week. Big deal. Like, literally a big deal. I'm not being sarcastic. It is a big deal. And Rama's gonna be playing in the Ryder Cup. He's got stomach issues. He withdrew from the Pro-Am. He didn't do his press conference. I'm like, there's no way Rama's gonna go out and give it his all at this, tournament where none of the other big names are playing. So I pulled him out of my DFS lineups. I mean, he is playing, but he's in 99th place. So Yeah, it doesn't seem, unless he has a big day tomorrow, he's probably not really in the mix. But yeah, PGA reporting is awful. You think NBA is bad? You think football's bad? You think any other sport is bad? Like, it doesn't hold a candle to PGA. It's like ancient, telegram reporting with injuries. It's just,
Right. All I know in PGA is that you get what you reap if you roster Louis Oosthuizen or Jason Day.
right, which is
Because
sometimes
you never know.
zero.
And he used to be Henrik Stenson. Does he withdraw every now and again?
Yeah, now he just sucks though. So he
okay. So it doesn't matter. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we're 1 minute to lock. We got I don't think we got any more lineups in the YouTube chat. I'm looking through. Daniel Hutchins says PGA would be better if they said nothing at all.
Yes.
Right. If they said nothing at all, right, Ron would have been higher owned, right?
Oh yeah, he probably would have been double what he ended up being like 20. He probably would have been 35 or 40. Big bet in at Borgata Sportsbook. $275,000 on the Giants +4.
Okay, that doesn't mean it's sharp or anything.
No, I don't. I know, but that person really wanted some action tonight. So
okay,
$275K on the Giants +4. That is not me.
Hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. We're right about at lock as usual. I root for myself first. So hopefully I win. You could win $100,000. Let me be unique at first, and then you guys could have the rest. But if I'm going to dupe with anyone, I hope I dupe with you guys, right? So hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Remember, we do these showdown shows before lock, Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. And Justin, you'll be you do the golf stuff. You do tons of content in the premium. Are you still doing baseball stuff also?
Yeah, I am. So it's this is a whirlwind month here.
All right, and then basketball's back, and then basketball means that you got to stay at your computer for 4 hours.
Thankfully, I usually don't do a ton of writing for basketball, so I'll leave that to the other folks. I got enough on my plate, but yes, you got to keep an eye on those lineups.
Okie doke. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, as always, in the morning for the DFS pregame show, 11 a.m. Hit that notification bell. You'll know when we go live. We got I'll also be with the Advanced Sports Analytics show tomorrow. There's a bunch of other shows. We got the Ownership Report. We got the Blitz show for premium members on Saturday. Tornid Takes. Subscribe to the Daily Fantasy Football feed. You could get there on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. All the shows go there for the NFL. And yeah, so let's see, Justin, if this game turns into a shitter.
It's probably going to turn into a shootout instead after.
Well, I just hope Dean isn't right. Whatever it is, I don't mind losing money, but I don't want to lose money while Dean is right with 2 backup running backs getting touched.
Dean can live the screenshot life if that's the case.
Okay, for Justin Van Zunen, STL Cards, I'm Jordan Cooper, Blender Ed, Blender HD, and that has been the Pre-Lock Show here on RotoGrinders.com.